Hello, everybody. This is Mr. Brown, my first ever YouTube video, and I hope we all found you very well this coof day. Lots of stuff happening in the UK. We're all locked down. The island of Great Britain has become an island because nobody loves us anymore. No flights, no nothing. We've only got ourselves to blame. Boris is useless, blah, blah, blah. What more can I say? But on a more positive note, we have a very special guest today, the one and only, the torchbearer of how we should be living our lives in a positive way, the one and only Commander Culture. Commander Culture, how are you today? Hello, sir.
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for bringing me on, Mr. Brown.
It's a genuine joy to speak to you, to be your for me to be the first person to interview you and talk bollocks. I hope you're pretty good, mate.
Oh, yes. If you ask my family or my significant other, they'll tell you all I talk is bollocks. So
that's all of us talk, mate. We all talk bollocks. Have you noticed how when we are being recorded, it goes from being relaxed to a little bit more kind of on the hoof? Can you tell?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
How do you think you're going to handle that when you start doing your stream?
I figure I'm just going to get used to it. It's like you said, you have to kind of ease into it with a little experience. A couple of, your first couple of videos are never going to be your best. You always want to do a few trial runs before you publish anything. I remember a year ago, maybe Gary was talking about when he first started, and he said he had a whole other channel that just had a bunch of bloopers
from Nerdrotic, yes.
From Nerdrotic, right. And
hail Gary.
Hail to him.
Hail Gary.
And, he's a king among kings, and a fellow Californian. So just trial and error, I think, is how you and I think, are going to get.
Is that where you're from, Commander Culture, California?
That is, yes. That's where I hail from. Originally, and I was lucky to grow up in what was left of the culture that the pioneers built there, and it was sort of Californicated, as they say, around me, as a kid.
Any particular area of California?
From the central part of California.
Which is, to people who are uninitiated.
Yes, so it's sort of a lateral line between San Francisco and Yosemite National Park.
Yes, I've been there. It's a beautiful part of the country.
Mm-hmm. It most certainly is, yeah. And the more people that go by there, the better for the tourist dollar. But So I'm sort of, I could be in Yosemite in an hour, or I could be in San Francisco in an hour. And I spent my childhood sort of doing that growing up, and it helped me appreciate natural beauty and what's really going on in nature.
Sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say that the contrast between the beauty of nature and the ugliness of human endeavors and politics and that kind of thing it struck me more and more. The older I got, and the more devolved the culture became. And that's part of one reason why, and probably similar to some of the other people that we listen to and share experiences with, that we retreated into nerddom a little bit.
Did you kind of wake up one day thinking, I'm sick of this shit, I need to air my opinion? Or had it been kind of bubbling up for a while?
Well, no, I was always a contrarian, even as a kid. And so I sort of wore that on my shoulder, and
how would you define contrarian for people who don't understand what that means?
Boy, well, good question. You're told that something is just so, and
right. It is what it is.
it is what it is. But
Okay.
you observe around you that things are not just so. And so you question it, and you're immediately snapped back,
Okay.
in line with all the other kids. And instead of conforming, because I'm essentially internally I'm a nonconformist.
I think we all are.
Yeah, you kind of have to
Yeah.
be, and I'm just
Yeah.
well, I'm not going to accept.
Always question.
Right. I'm not just going to accept this at face value, and I'm not going to accept a conventional wisdom, which isn't to say that I just reject, truth. Beauty, goodness, and truth. Truth is the most important thing there is, because it's such a rare commodity.
Yeah.
But and that sort of informed my opinions going all the way forward. Everything was contrarian. It was like a skeptic, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Which it's kind of ironic that I really enjoy things like the Exozone and Art Bell, Coast to Coast AM, and all those sort of woo-woo alien X-Files conspiracy theory stuff.
The interesting stuff, you mean? Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot more to the world than we're being told. That's part of being a contrarian. And understanding that there's a lot more out there.
So on your channel, which is going to be airing in 2021, folks.
Yes.
Really bad year 2020. So it's looking positive with Commander Culture's channel. So things are on the up. So content-wise, what are you wanting to bring over?
Sort of a hodgepodge. I want to talk about high culture. I want to talk about pop culture. I want to talk about low culture. I want to talk about the products of our civilization, and on the one hand, and then on the other hand, how we can both protect and nurture those things going forward.
And these products of our culture, what are they? Well,
everything from Charles Dickens and Herman Melville. Everything from Tchaikovsky to Elvis to Nirvana. Everything from
So creativity.
Creativity.
Yeah.
Sure. Because a creative mind is a mind that's always moving forward. These SJW ogres call themselves progressives, and I think that's one of their customary perversions of meaning. Because a progressive is somebody who wants to move forward, right? All they want to do is sort of drag us back into the mire, one of my the sign off line that I want to have is basically to the stars, right? Exactly. It pains me inside my soul that we're not colonizing asteroids, that we're not sending out colony ships.
We should have had a when the 60s 70s space race finished, we should have had men on the moon and to stay
permanently.
That's the next step. We will just to sound negative, I do apologize. We will ruin this planet and then go to another one and ruin that one. But hopefully by then we would have our mindset will be different.
I think I would hope, on the one hand, on the other, I'm part of it comes from an understanding, of what Stephen Hawking was talking about, where he said, if we don't get off of this planet, we're done for, as a species. And if we're worthy as a species, the only way that we can prove that is by getting off the rock. It's not by building more council houses. It's not by importing more people from sub-Saharan Africa. It's not by letting SJWs run rampant over our mythology. It has to do with getting off the rock. It's a single purpose mission.
It's the bigger picture, isn't it? A lot of these SJWs, it's a very, very closed mindset. It's political correctness ramped up to number 11. They're trying to say, basically, it's our way or the highway. We're right, you're wrong. But I think it's the arrogance of youth. When we were young, everybody's young once. Everybody's arrogant, thinking they know better than everybody else. But I don't want to sound like an old man here. 25 years ago, we didn't have the electronic outlets that we do now. And a lot of it is the keyboard warrior. They can pretty much say anything they want with no repercussions. If I called somebody a twat back in the day to the face, I'd get a smack.
Sure.
I think that's part of the problem. And these big corporations are, unfortunately, they've been pampering these people. And something's got to give.
I think you're certainly more charitable than I am, because I don't attribute it necessarily to youth. I mean, although the youth are being used as a vanguard, like you said, it's there's more going on there. It's not just like Kathleen Kennedy woke up one day and said, "I think I'm going to ruin Star Wars," or these people come from somewhere. They come from a culture that is, I think, opposed to the culture that we want and the culture that we know is healthy. And I would go out so far as to, I call it cultural Marxism. That's a phrase.
Okay, so why are you saying they're opposed to it? What's their ideals?
Well, for one thing, the first thing I think to understand is that they are puritanical, and they belong to that their philosophical fervor has flopped over deeply into what any dispassionate observer would call religious belief. Okay, right. So they are crusaders, and for this ideology. They believe in so the opposite of goodness is evil.
We're getting deep here,
right,
folks.
We're getting deep. And I don't think that each one of these people wake up every day and say, I'm going to do evil, but they do. Okay, so and I don't have to get too conspiratorial here. When Google made its motto, they made their motto that said, "Don't be evil." Okay. Now, normal people like you and I don't have to wake up every day, look ourselves in the mirror, take a deep breath and say, "Don't be evil." But these people did, going all the way back. And, what do you attribute?
Is it because they know they're in a position of power, and power corrupts absolutely, as Jean-Luc Picard would say in several episodes? Do you think it's down to that they know they're in a position where they can change things, but they're kind of changing the wrong things?
Yes, it is. But I don't think that's the sole reason for it. Okay, because you can look back and you can say, well, the aristocrats of ancient Europe, or even China, wherever you want, they had ultimate power, but they didn't, absolute monarchies and whatnot, emperor of heaven, but they didn't tear down their culture. They built it up, in fact, because they realized that was the scaffolding which held up their own power and their social life. Whereas these people are going in an opposite direction. They look at something beautiful and they say, I want to make that ugly. They look at something good and they say, I want to pervert that. They look at something that's true and they say that is false.
Do you think that's intentional, or is it because they just?
I think
they just haven't got the intelligence to actually see it.
Yes. That's a big part of it.
Is it? I have a very artistic brain.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's the way that the brain is wired to, how you use your left and right hemispheres, how you see things differently in life?
I think it is. I think it is.
So a kind of a mathematical person sees things differently than you or I, who sees, beauty or artistic things.
I think you're on the right track. For myself, because I know on our side there's plenty of people who have the mathematical brain, and there's plenty of people on the other side that have the artistic bent. I think it's the ability to see outside of oneself. It's the ability to
see the bigger picture,
and also to recognize, the things that are inside of us that are not good. To say, I harbor narcissism, I don't want to foster that. I harbor solipsism, I don't want to harbor that. I harbor jealousy, right? But I think that people on our side look at that and say, I want to be better than what my nature would have me be. And the people on the other side say, I see other people being better than me, I want to tear them down to my level, and that will make me happy. I think they say to themselves.
That's very negative, though.
Oh yeah, I know.
That's human nature, though, isn't it? It's very difficult not to be like that.
And that's why
jealousy and envious.
And that is why.
Yeah.
I think, Mr. Brown, you hit the nail on the head. That is human nature, but I believe that history has shown that Western civilization, has the best track record of negating that inherent human drive for destruction and negativity. We continue to reach higher and higher, and try to better ourselves. And even these people, in their perversion of progressivism, are trying to do that. They're just digging a deeper hole, saying that they're climbing ever towards heaven.
Over the summer, sorry to interrupt. Over the summer, when the Black Lives Matter stuff was going on,
right?
Me, in my stupidity, said, well, on a Facebook page, well, all lives matter, don't they? Because I understand in America that the attitude over there is way different to what it is in the UK. And for me, I live and let live. I just, I don't look at somebody on TV and straight away see their skin color. And I appreciate in the States it's different. It's a totally different environment, especially with the guns and stuff like that. And when this stuff was going on, as I said, I stupidly put that on a Facebook comment of a friend who I used to work with in a bike shop many years ago. And they just systematically tore me down for making that for that comment. Well, all lives matter, don't they? I systematically got character assassinated. I was told I should look at my white privilege, and I have privilege, maybe, but anything I've got out of life, I have had to earn. And I kind of think that the over in Britain it is different than in the States, admittedly. So for me, I've never even thought. I just get on with it. Get on with it. If you just go to work, earn your money, blah blah blah. If you want something, you buy it. And I was being, I've got nothing out of life. Anything I've got out of life, I've had to earn. And these people, 20 years my junior, said to me, "You should check your white privilege." And this person in specifically, his parents are care workers, and I would imagine they're on good money, in a very, very privileged position. He went to college and totally fucked it up, and it didn't matter because his parents have got that much money that it didn't matter to him. And he went to university, which education should be free for everybody. He went to, he just didn't care, he just fucked it up because he knew he had the white privilege of his parents would look after him. And he systematically just fucking tore me down. And it seems to me that these people doing the tearing down, when they look at it, are probably coming from a generation that is probably the most privileged of any generation. And that's what fucking irks me big time.
Well, it's and that's why when I see this, the first thing that comes to my mind is a religion. This is they are engaging in penance for their perceived sins that they've been told that they have or harbor, and it's quite mad, really. Because privilege is nothing more than, like you said, working for everything you've ever earned.
You've got to earn it, yes.
But going back. So your father worked for everything he had and gave to you. Your great grandfather worked, and it's the same. And so the fact that we might exist in a position that is better than, say, somebody in a third world country, for example, is the sole result of the sort of comparative values of our collected ancestors, right? Which is not to make a value judgment, but what it is to say is, there's reality, right? So we can be like ourselves, and we can continue to work hard, or we can be like your former colleague and fuck it up, and when we do fuck it up, then if we are a member of this woke cult, we can say, "Oh, I'm going to do penance by, castigating everyone around me as some sort of a nasty person." But I wholly reject this whole white privilege nonsense, because I've been to places that are not privileged at all. I mean, I've spent time in the former Soviet Union, and these people, struggled. I mean, like you would not believe.
It's very hand-to-mouth existence, isn't it?
It was, and I mean, they toiled under impossible situations, and have tried, to bring themselves up, and and you can see, oh well, this is what they're doing, and and so the idea, the frankly racist idea that somebody is a certain way just because of the color of their skin, as opposed to their cultural values, as opposed to anything else, is ridiculous.
Stereotyping, isn't it?
Right. Well, stereotyping, at least serves a useful function in some ways. It's like, oh, there's, but this is just, it's just, you could almost say it's unscientific, right. Because science is based on observation and on developing patterns based on that observation, and this is the exact opposite of that. And I again, okay, not to go on and on about about religion, but I don't think that religion is necessarily antithetical to science, but I think that this woke religion most certainly is. Do
you think? See, again, there is a difference in cultures, because I know America is very religious, whereas over this side of the pond, we're not. I don't think we're particularly religious at all. Do you think? See, for me, I wouldn't even put two together and come up with it being religion. Do you think that's because I'm from over this side of the pond, and the attitude
perhaps
is different, the thinking is different?
Perhaps, yeah. And having been from that side of the pond, you might be able to tell me, I mean, Europe, whether, I mean, I know Brits don't like to get lumped in with the continentals, but, everyone on that side of the, on that side of the world, religion, socialism, for example, has always been, going back to the days of Otto von Bismarck and the revolutions of 1848, blah, 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 blah. There's always been a certain, socialist element there, in the continent. But what we're seeing just now, just in the last 10 or 15 years, 20 years maybe, is a completely different cast. It's a whole different look and feel to this. And I think that what it is it's this puritanical, woke religion that's infecting the body politic in Europe. I see, for example, like I said, in Eastern Europe, I go there and the people ask me, they say, what's all this about, us having to host, gay pride parades and about, transsexuals in our kids' schools. And this is really, really weird to us, and it was then that I realized this is a cultural export of the United States. I mean, I'm the last person to stand behind Ayatollah Khomeini and call my own country the Great Satan, but I can see a malign influence that creeps out from the cultural institutions like Hollywood, and that's where I aim my target, which is the same place that, Nerdrotic and Doomcock and Midnight's Edge and all these other guys, they aim their target right there also, because this is from where the rot spreads. And so it's infected England to the point where a British person, I mean, there was, Britain, I mean, slavery was something that was unknown in England, going back from, the Middle Ages and racial tensions and things like that were almost non-existent. And now it's, these American talking points, like Black Lives Matter and, SGW and woke and all that are ubiquitous there, I would imagine, from all the reporting I'm seeing. And it's just like, that's all, how do we stop the sewer from venting its stuff all over?
Yeah, I was kind of with the I'll talk about the BBC. I was kind of totally oblivious to all of this up until probably earlier this year. It's just everything's just virtue signaling. How everybody, this is how you should live your life, and I think people are just sick of it.
Well, one of the monologues that I've written that I'll be delivering is, it kind of talks about this. I mean, there is a definite precedent for what we're seeing. For virtue signaling is a very common social reaction to militant Marxism. To a militant Marxist takeover, where you see this in the Soviet Union, saw this in North Korea, in Cuba, in communist China, where people will all of a sudden, and maybe Nazi Germany too, if you want to look at those sort of examples, where people will all of a sudden, who had one day been fairly liberal, with a small L, and then the next day they're spouting the talking points and turning in their neighbors, and it's self-censorship, it's self-brainwashing. And it's a very common early stage of political and social totalitarianism. And the fact that the media is all on board with this is concerning to me, to say the least. I was a member of the media for many years, and I understand how the news is sort of made. But what we're seeing now is it's pure unadulterated propaganda, like the Izvestia and Pravda of old. It's nothing different. And that's concerning to me also. It's kind of like you wake up one day. So, you had asked earlier, like, did I just wake up one day? And I suppose at one point I did. I sort of looked around and I said, this isn't the game anymore. This isn't my side versus their side. This isn't, Labor versus Tory or Republican versus Democrat or whatever. This is a civilizational, all-out crusade and counter crusade. And there were people in America previous to my understanding of it that were talking about this in terms of a culture war. And I sort of looked at it and said, oh, that's very fine rhetoric, but they really meant it. And I understand now that was actually something that was
so what do you think the ultimate end game is from these corporations is then? Why are they doing this? Yeah, why are they doing this?
Well, there's sort of, I think, two things that are going on. One is that they think that the harder they signal their virtue, the less they will be likely to be devoured in the new, reality. And then on the other hand, it's just simple bottom line. If they can outdo their competitor, then they sort of win. The thing is that's concerning about this is that they're not making any money doing this. They're all falling over themselves to lose money, which tells me, as an observer of economics and history, that they already think the fix is deeply in. They already know that it has nothing to do with profit. Well, the only economic system that maligns profit is communism. And so Google thinks that the communists already have won. Microsoft thinks that the communists have already won. CBS and CNN and the BBC, they already think that these cultural Marxists have won and are triumphant and ascendant, and they're just jockeying for position next to the throne.
All right, so it's like they're in the position. It's like better the devil you know. Kind of
right, and better to serve in heaven,
succumb, in other words,
to rule in hell. Better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven. So, and they're working hard towards that aim. But you see, here's where we win, right? Because I'm not here to blackpill anybody. That my whole thing is remoralization. The most important element in a war is morale, right? So, the thing is that they can't win. The logic of their strategy is faulty. You can't continue to influence a culture if you're losing money hand over fist. I mean, you're not going to be able to pump out this kind of crap version of Lord of the Rings if nobody is willing to pay for your stuff. You can only do that so long before you've eaten your seed corn. So, just like with the Soviet Union, fell in on itself. Just like all these communist countries fall on the rocks and they can't move forward. Doesn't mean that they die. They need to be put down, which is where you and I and everyone else comes in. But on their own, I don't think that they're the scary giants that everyone thinks that they are.
Do you think this mindset is a very, very big flaw in the human genome, as it were?
Yes, because because of two things. I mean, everyone wants to survive. That's an animal instinct, right? And
animals are the ultimate survivors.
That they are, and humans are the ultimate herd animal. You do not want to be seen outside of the herd, and being seen outside of the herd means death. Means freezing out in the cold and being killed by a saber-toothed tiger. And so you can't. So it's hardwired into the majority of people who are, as you mentioned earlier, of average or less intelligence. That they just revert back to, must hoard things, must consume things, must act like everyone else, and that will keep me safe. I mean, these SJW types, whether they're the young people that you mentioned or whether they're all the way up at the corporation, they're frightened animals, and not much more. And that's where the word triggering comes from. Triggering is a reptilian response to fear, and that's all that they've got going for them is just that sort of knee-jerk, reaction to stimuli.
Your level of knowledge is far outweighs mine. Wow.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Wow. I'm kind of coming in at the basement level here. As I said, I've just recently kind of woke up to all this.
Mm-hmm.
No pun intended. I think was it? I don't know if it was you. A previous conversation I had with you or somebody else saying it's basically a war on Christianity.
I don't think we'd gotten that far in our conversation.
It must have been somebody else then that all this is kind of, I think it probably was on one of the YouTube channels, like DC's or Nerdrotic or Gary's channel. No, I've something somewhere. Somebody said it's just basically a war on Christianity. I don't know if that's kind of going back to the American side of things.
Well, I mean, number one, I would agree with that statement. Number two, I would say that whether one is a Christian or not, I think that a fundamental pillar of Western civilization is Christian morality, right?
Yeah.
And the theology that underlies that morality. You can't divorce Christian morality from the success of Western civilization. And when you try to either destroy morality or when you try to destroy Christianity, it jackhammers one of the fundamental pillars of Western civilization, or what was it was synonymously known as Christendom, right? So I mean, but unlike Gary, who's agnostic, and DC, who's formerly Christian, I think he said, I'm a very committed Christian. And so, but I don't allow that to color my view of this. I think, one could easily, make that argument that Christianity is a pillar of Western civilization, but I don't think that everyone has to be Christian. I think that just the acceptance, and even these SJWs, with their idea of, you have to be kind, you have to be tolerant. The idea of tolerance, I can tell you as a student of Eastern civilization, of China, is a very foreign concept to history. To humanity. The idea of equality only comes from this idea that we're all sort of one in Christ. I mean, people will say, well, what about the Greeks, this and that? Well, the Greeks were extremely exclusive. I mean, the Greeks were slave masters. The Greeks would not let anyone be part of their polis who was even from another city-state, let alone from a foreign country. And so so you take this universality that really only Christianity brings, with these ideas of tolerance and equality, and so the ironic thing, and this is how I know again that these bad guys are going to lose, because they build their foundation, their claim to legitimacy, on Christian principles that they then reject. It's like being in a life raft in the ocean and also being a pyromaniac with a lot of matches. It's not going to end well for you. No. So, so we can sit in our ship of the line, and they can lob cannons, shells at us from their raft. But we know that in the end, we're going to come out on top. It just is going to take a battle, and we're going to have to help them.
Do you think these people? Do you actually think they feel that it is a war? And that they're doing this to be, right?
Yes. I mean,
so
that's why
it's not unintentional. This is purely intentional. From the beginning.
Yeah, they look at themselves as resistors, in the style of the French during the occupation. They call themselves, originally they called themselves social justice warriors. That was not a term that our side came up with. And they wore that mantle proudly as they, beat down resistors physically and emotionally and mentally. They definitely see this as a war. And our side just hasn't showed up.
We are the only species that, as I said, going back to the animals are the ultimate survivors.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have any agenda. It's like the coof. The coof doesn't have an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
It just does what it does. Animals do what they do. They've got they're just bothered about where the next meal is coming from.
Right.
Food. Whereas we just seem to have a fantastic knack of wanting to destroy ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we just need to get away from we just need to get away from this. Going back to what you said, we have such a great knack of wanting to destroy things. I was about building things for the positivity of mankind.
Right.
It just seems everything's in a bit of a tumble, a washing machine at the moment, being churned around,
mm-hmm.
and doesn't seem to be any positivity about anything. It's just about trying to tear people down, control people. I'm starting to ramble here. As I said before, Commander, your level of knowledge about this far outweighs mine. So I can only just kind of chime in every now and again and just basically just listen to a lot of what you're saying. And I get it. But as I said, I just kind of, I only just started seeing things at the beginning of this year. And it's like, we don't need this. There's far more important things in life to worry about than all this shit.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Your mic's buzzing again.
No, your view is just as valid as mine. We look at things from different angles. That's all. I sort of my.
Have you? Sorry, Commander, to interrupt.
Yeah.
Have you done something with your microphone? It's been very good for the past 40 minutes, and then all of a sudden it's just started to chime up again.
Oh, is it? All I did was I just sort of shifted it.
I put it back where it was.
Okay, let me try to do it. Tell me.
Beautiful. It's got to be radio interference. It's beautiful now.
Is it? Interesting.
It's beautiful.
Okay, and how does my voice sound?
Beautiful.
Huh. Weird. Okay. You'll never
radio
guess what
interference.
I just set it next inside sort of a wooden box type thing. So I don't know how that improves.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Purely by accident, we've discovered why the microphone, his brand new microphone, is buzzing. So if you want to ever cure any buzzing, wood. Get some wood.
Put it in a box.
Wood.
Right. Interesting. Okay, well, I'm glad that's.
Was it on a metal table or anything, Commander?
No. It was just I was either holding it up or it was in its mount.
It sounds beautiful.
Interesting.
Beautiful.
Okay. Well, we're back to the Stone Age then.
We are.
Yeah. No. So I'm trying to think. You had a very good sort of monologue there.
It's just me talking bollocks.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Which I do frequently, but occasionally the odd snippet of stuff comes out, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, well, I'll say that I'm thoroughly enjoying this conversation. This is what I was going to say. It's my unique, some people would say bizarre sort of mindset is such that I envision that there's a meteor. Right, it's out there. It's hurtling towards Earth at this very moment on an impact trajectory, and we know. We know that this is the case. Any scientist will tell you. They might tell you it's not going to hit for 20 million years, or they might tell you we might discover it tomorrow. Yeah. But we don't know, and so we don't have time to dick around, in the mud here, figuring out who's less equal and more equal than other people. We need to build ourselves out. and essentially,
what you're saying, what is all this is just very petty. It's just petty stuff.
completely, and that's, but
But it means such a lot to people.
I think people are petty. I think, and that's why. And that's why, and that's not me being, an asshole or something. I mean, that's just looking objectively.
You're correct, mate. You're correct. You're absolutely correct.
Well, and that's why people like you and I, we love Star Wars. We love Lord of the Rings. We like these things that say we can be better. We can improve on our lot in life.
Yes.
We can fix what's wrong with ourselves to begin with, and then our community around us.
There's an immediate kind of here and now fix, isn't there? People need a quick fix now, but it's not good though, is it really? That kind of that dopamine hit, that quick.
No.
Yes.
No. And that's I think. That is, I think, and so again, we're going to come back here to my talk about culture, Western cultures, Western civilization. There's an idea in psychology and in sociology called delayed gratification, right? Sort of the poetic way of looking at that is saying, men will plant seeds that will grow into trees in whose shade they will never sit. When you look at a cathedral and you say that thing took 400 years to build, that is a strength of Western civilization, of being able to delay that gratification. You see that also in the other successful civilization, which is the East in China, but it takes on a very different and much more authoritarian cast. When you look at it here, it's individuals like you and me, and your father and my father saying, I'm going to take that extra step. I'm going to delay my gratification so that I can build something better over a longer period of time. And that's what defines Western civilization. That's what defines Star Wars and Star Trek and apparently Doctor Who. I confess to never having watched it.
Doctor Who's gone down the virtue signaling shitter. Never mind. That's just BBC thing at the moment. The inclusion mindset.
Right. Which is not sort of timeless. You look at these, and this has been talked about before, but it's like these people seek to create sort of these transcendental, timeless truths. But what they're really doing by making things relevant to the day is they're blasting out any kind of chance that this would be seen as something relevant, later on. I don't know. There's more people have said better things than I could about that, but it's true. It's true. And so I think that really we're, in the middle stages of, let's see, what did Winston Churchill say? He said, we're not at the beginning of the end, but we're at the end of the beginning, I think that that's right where we are, where Britain was at the end of the Battle of Britain, where we're seeing our enemy falter for the first time. I mean, these are the guys that beat us at at Dunkirk or whatever. These are the guys that beat us in the media industry. How can they possibly be beat? They're a juggernaut that's just taken over all of the world. But we see them falter now, and we know that they're mortal. And if we prick them, do they not bleed? As Data would say.
They do. I think the Star Wars have been pricked this week.
Yes. Yeah. Are you referring to the
Mandalorian at the end? Yes.
I haven't had a chance to get caught up on the finale.
I won't say, but it was a very, very big cultural moment.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'll look. Because for me also, Star Wars died. But I'll tell you, I'll be honest. The Star Wars died for me with the prequels. I have never been as disappointed.
They were disappointing, but at least, at least George Lucas were doing them. But did they need to be told? I don't know.
I would say, I mean, this takes us down a whole other path, and this is
I
something that
think
I've certainly
died is
discussed.
strong.
Well, I'm talking for me, right?
Yeah,
As a Star Wars fan, as a kid who grew up, I mean, my grandmother was an English teacher. She was one of the first women to get a master's degree at the college, at the university that she went to, and she's a very progressive sort of person. And she taught me story arc. She taught me character development through watching Empire Strikes Back scores of times. I mean, we would sit there and we would watch, and she would explain how this is the perfect story. And so I watched this, and so I have a very high expectation of, number one, what Star Wars is and its mythology, and for the level of storytelling that was inherent there. And and then the prequels came along, and I was all charged up because I don't know if you remember, they re-released the original trilogy in the theaters a year or two before the prequels came out.
Yeah, they did. Yes.
Yeah, I was amped up. I mean, they made a few little crazy tweaks here and there, but
I went to see them. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't turn Boba Fett into a Kiwi. They didn't. They changed a few of Darth Vader's lines, which really pissed me off. Because it changed the whole thing. But then, and then the prequels came, and I'm like, what is this? This isn't grand storytelling. This is just a series of events that may have happened, because I can't even confirm that they did happen, even though I'm seeing them with my own eyes, because Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by Alec Guinness, told me that these things happen differently. I still believe Alec Guinness sitting there in his cave on Tatooine rather than whatever George puked up on the screen. But that's just me. I'm a purist. I'm the kind of guy who, I've read the Timothy Zahn novels. I know what happens after Endor. And it has nothing to do with whatever this
that should have been is. Yeah, that should have been the I think his biggest mistake. He started at episode 4. He should have been all in and started at number 1 and gone through, or go from 4, 5, 6 and carry on after Endor. And I think everybody wanted the story after Endor.
Yeah, for sure. Nobody was asking for prequels.
I don't know what he was thinking.
George Lucas is crazy. I'll tell you, George Lucas came from very close to where I grew up. Okay, I mean, I know a lot of people who knew him personally. He's made movies about like basically our hometowns and these kind of things.
Okay,
but he's an extremely eccentric guy, but he's very simple, and I don't mean that in a negative or derogatory way. I mean that in, there's not a lot of fluff. It is what it is. He wants to tell, right?
Yeah.
And so when he's given full creative control, you get something like the prequel, where it's just like, there's a boy, there's his mother. These things happen. People talk a lot more, and then the movie's over. And it's like, okay, yes, a story was told, and it was the story that was in your head.
But exciting.
But it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't anything that was engaging. It wasn't anything that held people. And he really hit gold with Star Wars, because, as other people pointed out, he had a lot of other creative input, and he was restrained by those kind of people.
With the sorry to interrupt. No. The Star Wars end scene is basically complete. It's based on the English film The Dam Busters. If you ever watched the film The Dam Busters,
I haven't watched the film, but I'm familiar with the
it's pretty much scene for scene. He copied the trench run. It's basically based on the Dam Busters film. You must check it out. It's a good film, is the Dam Busters. It's very old, but it's a good film. Sorry, I digress. Sorry.
No, not at all. But yeah, I mean, things like that. Somebody says, can you do this for us? And he says, well, I guess we can include that. I mean, for example, I mean, the stuff that made Star Wars great, and I don't want to take away from like Star Wars, Episode 4, but it was John Williams' score. It was the team that came up with I forget what exactly it's called, but where you move the camera around the model instead of vice versa.
Motion control.
This kind of stuff that was never done before, and the creature features and things like that.
Yeah.
And then it was built around sort of a good story. But okay, I'll tell you where I got this realization, because I was reading some of the notes just out there, because I had some time on my hands, of Indiana Jones, right, which was a collaboration between Steven Spielberg and George Lucas.
Yeah.
And Steven Spielberg was coming up with all this wacky stuff, and you could get the sense from the transcript that George Lucas was just sort of like,
what?
Blown away. He's just like, I don't know. I thought this was just a guy who collected ran away from stuff, which again isn't to say it's negative, but he's like, and in that sense, okay, Indiana Jones would have been a much worse movie without George Lucas saying, no, let's bring it back to the story. This main line, this track, this iron rail of a story, because the directions that Steven Spielberg wanted to take it were quite frankly insane. Just it would have made the movie a hodgepodge. And so, that worked, for example. But
Gary on Nerdrotica said that it was the people around George Lucas that was the real magic with Star Wars. Was it Gary Kurtz, Return of the Jedi? I think it was Gary Kurtz. Did he leave, or Lucas fired somebody? Which is why Return of the Jedi isn't quite there.
I want to say Kurtz or Kasdan. I can't remember. I'm not good.
I think Kasdan's the writer, isn't he? I'm sure it was Gary Kurtz. Star Wars, as much as I like Star Wars, isn't really I like it. I know. When I was on Doomcock's show the other night, I just thought it's nice to be here, but these guys, Star Wars means a hell of a lot, and I understand totally, because I love Star Trek, and Star Trek's it's just down the shitter.
Oh yeah. Well, it's non-existent now.
Sad.
I mean,
so sad.
And we could spend a lot of time
another
talking
hour
about this too, for sure. And I maybe we will someday. And I think that, speaking of DC, he was the one who said, and I just laughed my head off here, and my wife thought I was going crazy. She said, "What are you laughing about?" And I said, he said, if you want to get inside George Lucas's head and see pure, unadulterated Lucas, watch the movie Willow. And I thought back to that movie, and it's just madcap, sort of goofy. It's engaging. It's fun. I remember watching the movie. I liked it. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't serious. It didn't move you to a higher plane, sort of a thing. And it certainly didn't capture an element of mythology, even though it was, obviously in a fantasy world. But I do want to ask a question, if you don't mind me switching gears here, to talk about Star Trek, because I think neither you or I are really industry people like some of these guys.
Oh no, I'm just an ordinary Joe. Yeah,
and I'm a fan. That's all I do is I just enjoy this stuff. But talking about Star Trek, so. I was this typical Star Trek fan of my generation. I had heard and I had seen episodes of the original series, and I really grew up, came of age, watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. Actually, the first place I ever saw it was in Britain. I saw Encounter at Farpoint on BBC, and wow. And I was like, "What? The British are doing something? This looks like a ripoff of Star Trek." And my grandma said it's probably something like Red Dwarf. And I said,
Red Dwarf.
It's pretty good, and then I realized, because Picard is an English actor, I thought, why? How could you have an English captain? But anyway, damn him to hell now. But so I really grew into Star Trek: The Next Generation, and then when Deep Space Nine came along, I sort of struggled with it a little bit, like a lot of fans did.
Same here. Same here.
I didn't. but I've grown to appreciate it now that the whole arc is sort of open, and because I really like character development. This is something, and that Next Generation kind of didn't have, for all of its great things. Its character development was sort of lacking there. And then Voyager came out, and I was initially very excited. Here we're back into outer space, we're flying around, and the first episode I was just like, what the hell am I watching?
There was that. Yeah, I do have a soft spot for Voyager.
Well, let me tell you. I'm not here to savage
I stuck
Voyager.
with it.
Because then that's kind of what you had to do. It might have been easier across the pond there, but here it flipped between two different networks. And then they gave it the Firefly treatment, where they would play it at different times on different days, and you could never. So I would pick episodes here and there, and I would hear from friends who were bigger fans. They're like, "Oh, they encountered the Borg." I'm like, "Oh, great!" So they're ripping that off too, sort of a thing. And is there Chakotay on some damn spirit quest again? And it was just dumb for me, just as I loved all that. So, well, okay, but okay, hear me out. So the older me, I get a little more seasoned, and I bumped into another. I made a new friend who was a Star Trek fan, and we were talking, and he said, "You got to give Voyager another chance." And I said, to be quite frank, I don't want to. I said, I've got my head canon. This is just ridiculous, And he said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. We will watch every single episode, because I've got them all on DVD, and I will buy you pizza, or dinner. I'll order in dinner, and we'll watch like 3 or 4 episodes.
That's a good friend
every week.
That's a great friend.
He was my best friend after that, and so we had some great meals. We watched these episodes, kind of binge watched them, and we talk them over. And the thing is Voyager really, really grew on me during that while I was watching it all.
It was a grower, yes.
And the thing was, and this is what I took out of it, and maybe you took something different, but this is my thesis, is that the Next Generation, Star Trek The Next Generation is, and the original series, is the flagship of the Federation. It is the absolute best that Star Trek or Starfleet has to offer. It's the best of the best. They hold their ideals of the Federation very, very highly. But then you've got hundreds of other ships that are in Starfleet, right? And so the question is, what are those ships like? And then you go to Voyager, which is a ship that wasn't even supposed to be fully commissioned, that didn't have a full crew, that's covered with renegades, and that are involved in political intrigue and dissent and all this kind of thing. And so what you get is, instead of having the best ship in the Federation, you end up with, let's just say, the worst ship in the Federation.
It wasn't the worst. No, they were thrown into an extreme circumstance.
Well, yes.
The idea, the premise was good to have. Here's Starfleet and the Marquis.
I like that. And I would have liked it better. I didn't know this until I heard it.
You had the lefties and the righties trying to get together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they do, though. That's the nice thing about it.
They do because
because it's a survival thing. Now, I would have liked to have seen the Battlestar Galactica treatment, of Voyager. I guess, I've heard Gary, I think, say that they were planned, that the writer, the creator for that was trying to do that with Star Trek, and then it got, they said, no, that's
there was the episode's Year of Hell. Do you remember Year of Hell?
Oh yeah, I sure do.
Which is one of the better stories. Was it Brandon Braga? Pitched to Rick Berman, instead of just doing 2 episodes, he actually wanted Year of Hell to be a complete season, which I think would have been fantastic, because that was just totally left field of what we'd had before. And,
but it was more realistic, though.
Yeah, Rick Berman said no, which I think was a mistake.
I think it was probably
a big mistake.
A big mistake, yeah. I know a lot of people that I knew in the Trekkie universe, they were calculating like power requirements. They were counting photon torpedoes, and they're like, this is just bollocks, this whole thing, you know. They can't be doing this. How come the ship is always clean? How come they always have enough food, you know, blah blah blah. But here's the thing, here's the point that I wanted to make about this. And the show really came into its own, I think, when 7 of 9 came along, and not for the reason that everyone thinks so, although that's what got me watching.
Jerry Ryan still got it.
The thing is, she does, and she's an amazing actress too.
She is.
You know, the thing is that the doctor and she were perfect. They were their characters were perfect beings, so to speak.
Yes.
Right. She had been created to be perfect, and he had been created to be perfect, and they had spent the time that they had been alive perfecting themselves even more.
He fell in love with her.
Well, right. And here's the reason why, because I always wondered, I thought that's kind of creepy, but then I realized they viewed the rest of the crew around them as imperfect, you know, and that's why when I say like the worst crew in the Federation, like they look at them and they said, you know, these are the ideals. This is what perfection means. This is what perfection looks like. I know, because I am my own ideal of perfection.
Yeah.
But they had to deal with imperfect people around them, and that interplay, physical, and like, how come these humans are like this, you know, but at the same time trying to become more like them, at the same time as trying to perfect themselves even more, and also being alone. I mean, they were very lonely people, which is why they sort of had that, you know, there was that romantic sort of intersection, if you will.
Yes.
And I found that to be deeply compelling, you know, in a lot of ways, because even if you notice, like, with the doctor, it wasn't a purely romantic interest, although it was. Like, he couldn't figure out whether he had sort of I don't know if you call it sexual, maybe a pseudo-sexual attraction and love, if you want to use that word, because he was a computer program for 7 of 9, or if it was like a fatherly sort of love and attraction, you know, and he didn't know how to express it. You know, I found the whole dynamic very interesting, because he wasn't supposed to have any emotion at all. You know, how could he possibly have emotion if he was
because he's a computer?
A computer, I mean, and Data couldn't have emotion, but Data was a very different type of AI. And so, you know, and she, as a human, you know, as much as she was as a machine, was incapable of receiving love, or either as a child would receive a love from a parent, or as an intimate would receive love. And Janeway was always trying to reach out to her like as a mother, and she couldn't connect that way. So it was a very nuanced show. That you know, I came to realize that it was extremely deep.
Commander Culture says nuanced. I say well written.
I think that it was both. We'll say that.
Yeah. That's what a lot of the current Star Trek is missing. It's just not well written.
Let's not even call it Star Trek. I mean, because what it is it's appallingly bad fan fiction. Yeah,
deeply upsetting. And I get called historiophobe, blah blah blah, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
By God, it's just totally. It's total by these people calling me whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That straight away is just totally anti Star Trek, because Star Trek would never do that.
Right. Well, but their Star Trek would. You see?
Yes, I know. And that's,
you know, our Star Trek with the real Captain Jean-Luc Picard, with the Spock, with you know, with.
But they will say that our Star Trek isn't the real Star Trek. Theirs is. So there lies the problem.
Well, because so what they have in front of them is a corporate product that has been shoveled like so much manure onto their plate and down their throat. What we have is a cultural icon that stands alone outside of any kind of corporate control.
It's just well-written stories of
compelling characters. Yeah.
Compelling stories, characters, and life of how it would be in the 24th century, not as a reflection how life is now.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why a lot of this new Trek stuff is Sir Patrick let himself down badly by trying to bring in all this kind of, oh, we want to do the show and we want to do the Orange Man and Brexit, and I don't think that just confirmed that Sir Patrick never understood totally what Star Trek was about.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched 2 episodes of Picard, and I just thought no.
You got through twice as many as I did.
I just thought no, and I can't watch Star Trek Next Generation now without seeing that. And I know Doomcock is the same.
Mm-hmm. But those poor guys, they've watched it all.
Their level of understanding about it. There's a difference between how, because we did a live stream doing Star Trek 3 over the summer. We had Doomcock, Robert Meyer Burnett, who's a really big kind of Star Trek Next Generation bigwig. He's actually worked for CBS doing the Blu-rays. Their level of knowledge about Star Trek is really, really next level. And we discussed on the program, because we had basically half the panel was American, the other one was British, myself included. And we see Star Trek totally different to how the Americans see Star Trek.
How so?
Which I thought was quite interesting. We just see a good story. I just like to see a good story. And they were kind of just, this was on screen and this means to me A, B, C, and D. And we saw this and this means this, that, and the other. And it's like, what? So I would say, me being British, our level of expertise and knowledge is probably very, very low. But we know what we like, attitude, if you know what I mean. Whereas, Americans, I don't know, it's I don't know if it's deeper. Going back to the 60s when Uhura was the bridge crew, over here, we wouldn't have even thought about what that meant. But in the States, that was massive.
Right.
Especially when in the episode, is it Games of Triskelion? I think it is. My knowledge is, where Kirk kissed Uhura, the first interracial kiss on American TV. Over here, when we saw it, that probably wouldn't mean anything to us over here. But that was a massive moment in the States, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe it. Well, that was before my time when it aired, but it certainly was. And I can sort of speak to that too. I think, certainly because, Gene Roddenberry would have considered himself international, but he was American at the core.
Yeah.
And he was telling an American story, or speaking to an American audience, I guess you could say. For me, as a kid, growing up in the 80s, very, my parents didn't, even talk about it much or mention it, but there was a Cold War going on, and I picked up a lot of that. I absorbed a lot of that, to the point where I was afraid of nuclear bombs, and where I was, we had where I lived, Soviet ships would come in to buy grain from California, and I was thinking,
Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Everybody, carry on.
right. And so to when my dad would show me these old episodes, I would. The thing that stood out to me
The
wasn't
original
so much
series,
Uhura,
yes.
the original
Yeah,
series, yeah. But it was that Chekhov was there, and and
yeah.
I thought to myself, this means that in the future there will be peace between Russia and the United States. That we won't blow each other up and hate each other and kill each other, and there won't be any more Russians or there won't be any more Americans because Kirk's
that's
American.
why we loved it, and that's why we loved it.
Right, it gave me hope. I will tell you that
It set us free. But the thing is, you were a kid. I was a kid, and to me, I just looked at it and I just loved it. It was like men on. To be honest, I didn't even see it because I wouldn't have been old enough to kind of appreciate the thinking behind it. To me, it was just people on spaceships. That's very cool. That's very cool. Whereas now I can understand now why it was big, because of you have an Asian, you have Uhura, Chekhov, Russian. You have Mr. Spock. It was like perfect. Everybody got on with everybody. We were going back to what you said earlier. We were past the pettiness of humankind. Yeah, we'd gone past all this pettiness, and we'd gone into something. We had bettered ourselves.
And that's where this non-Trek now makes itself non-Trek. I mean, they revel in the pettiness and the ugliness and the despair. And
how many people were murdered this week?
When I heard, I did not watch these things on episodes, but like when I heard about what like the bloody gore in the Picard thing, especially like towards the Borg and towards the Romulans, that kind of thing really angers me. And this is somebody who, I will tell you, when I was watching Star Trek, what was it? Was it First Contact or no? Generations, I think, and they saw, and the Romulan space station had been attacked, and you saw the dead Romulan with green blood coming out. I was like, "Whoa, that's awesome!" Or like the Borg blood was globulating in space, in First Contact. I'm like, I like that. I mean, that's really cool, but that's not what Star Trek is about. And they were making it a gore fest. They were literally sacrificing Aztec style, beloved characters like Hugh and these other people.
I didn't like that at all.
On the altar. Agreed. I can't even think about that. I mean,
no, not good.
Oh no, that to me was sacrilege. No. That was a declaration of war, because that's one of the most beloved minor characters in all of Star Trek.
I'm actually what's the guy's name? Is it Manu? The guy who played, I can't remember his name. Forgive me.
The guy who played
Icheb.
Icheb, right?
He follows me on Twitter, just totally random. God knows why he follows me on Twitter, just totally random.
Well, maybe you could get him on one of my broadcasts. I don't know, because
I actually a friend of mine who I actually did the Star Trek stream with said he's actually streamed with it. He'd be up for it. Yeah,
I loved that character. I loved the portrayal. I think that his portrayal, in particular, in that last season, I think, or last two seasons of Voyager, catapulted that show into the ranks of
it was great. Yeah,
it really. As a father myself, as somebody who is really, I guess you could say, sensitive to those sort of human interactions and contact. I mean, it was extremely moving. All of his portrayal and his story arc and things like that.
You totally got it. Yes.
And to do this, kind of. I mean, I don't even. So yeah, Voyager. I mean, not Voyager. Discovery, whatever. STD is beyond dead to me. It's like
everybody slags off season 2. I watched it twice now, and as a piece of entertainment, I was entertained, but it wasn't Star Trek. It was very lowest denominator, but I did enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. And if you enjoy things, good for you. Yeah.
Right.
But season 3, I think I got about 3 episodes in, and I just didn't like where it had gone. It was seen to be, each episode was lecturing that we've got this, we've got that, we're great, we're so inclusive. And does that make me a bad person for actually seeing that? That all I want is to be entertained? Does that mean I'm a bad person?
No,
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't think so at all. My thing, my headcanon is very important to me. I think that's a phrase that Gary uses. My headcanon is extremely important to me. So I can't see, like emo Spock. I can't see, guns blazing 7 of 9.
I didn't mind emo Spock.
I wouldn't know because I can't watch it.
I didn't mind him at all. I didn't like the kind of Michael Burnham sister and all that stuff. I thought, oh, that's stretching it a little bit. But is it Ethan Peck was his name? I thought he played the character quite well. I would have this Strange New Worlds. I know Gary and Doomcock says, "Oh, that's where they drag you in. That's where they've got you." If I saw Strange New Worlds as our Next Generation or the original Star Trek was written, it would be a great story, because I would be watching something where I would be entertained, not lectured at, or if I was being lectured, it would be so well written that you wouldn't even. It'd be so subtle. It'd be well written, and it wouldn't even spoil the narrative. Whereas all this new stuff, it's just so obvious. I mean, it's like with Doctor Who. Some of the guys over here who I know, who I streamed with, they're massive Doctor Who fans, and I feel sorry for. I've always enjoyed Doctor Who. I've always watched Doctor Who, and this last series, I stopped watching it. It's just sick of it. I didn't have a problem with a woman being the Doctor, not a problem. But write it well, for fuck's sake. And it's not. It's everything's just so two-dimensional.
Right. And get an actress that could carry the role too. I mean,
I think that's part of the problem, Commander. That is, she's just not quite big enough, or maybe she should have just kind of done her own thing, and then she might have grown into it. But hello, Dan Hadley, by the way. Hello, sir. I think he would probably agree that the writing is just so poor. It's just so poor.
From what I have seen, I could only agree. Yeah, especially because my experience with British TV is probably similar, maybe a little bit more extensive than most Americans because I spent time there. But it's like British television is very snappy. I mean, in that everything moves along very quickly and smartly, and it flows from one to the other. So, I mean, I've watched like 2 of my favorite shows in all of British TV. On the one hand is Blackadder, and on the other end is a show called Taggart. And
there's been a murder.
There's
been a murder.
There's been a murder.
There's been a murder.
And I just
McManus, God bless him.
And I don't know. I heard that because I watched this back in the early '90s, and then I heard Taggart's still going. I'm like, what? How in the
yeah?
Like, you know, they change out the actor.
Mark McManus. I think they did about 3-4 series with Mark McManus. God rest his soul. And then I think he died. I don't know if he was an alcoholic or it was something kind of along those lines. Or it was not pleasant for him. But this program was so massive. They thought, well, it'd be stupid. What can we do? So basically, they just carried on doing the same stories, but one of his underlings was promoted.
This is like what they did with Law and Order.
But the program was still called Taggart,
even though Taggart was
dead, because it was just like a homage to him. And it lasted for quite a long time. I think it lasted for about another 7 or 8, 9, 10 years after Mark McManus had gone, because it was just so well written.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. That I know that ability to write well is it's there. Whether you're talking comedy, whether you're talking drama, you know, it's all. And then it's like, how do they write such utter rubbish? You know,
maybe they just haven't got the talents.
Well, that's a sad statement, you know. Or okay, this could come back to you know, this whole cancel culture thing.
They are talented than most people, but not talented enough, if you understand what I mean.
Or they are, you know, they self-censor. You know, they're like, well, they don't want me to write compelling stories. They want me to write to a narrative. You know,
I think that could be a problem. Yes,
for sure. You know, I mean, this is like, you probably had great novelists in the Soviet Union, but we'll never know because they came out with this, you know, party line garbage.
And we'll never, we'll never see any of it.
Right. Yeah. It's just gone, and that's the tragedy. Right, you know, that's the tragedy. Let me ask you, since we're talking British TV, my all-time favorite, I could rewatch the episodes 10,000 times. Was a show very short-lived. I think it was only 2 seasons. Called The Piglet Files. Do you remember that? It would have been in the early '90s, and it was. God, who was the actor? You'd recognize him because he went on and did other stuff that was bigger.
I think my God, this is going back. I remember The Piglet Files. I have watched it, but it was so long ago. I can't remember anything about it.
Nicholas Lyndhurst. He was the guy. Yeah.
I don't know if it was a detective thing.
It was a spy thing. MI5,
yeah.
I think. And,
my God, that's going back. That's going back. Jesus.
I cannot get enough of that show. It's just, I watched it when it was original, and I thought, oh, this has got to keep going, you know, for years and series like Blackadder, and it didn't.
I think mentioning Blackadder, the BBC have rerun, I think series 2 on Saturday nights recently. Because I think they've run out of content to show. So
well, they know that'll put bumps in seats.
Blackadder 2 is one of the greatest series of comedy ever written. Yeah, it's just amazing. It's just series 1 of Blackadder was very iffy.
Right.
I remember an ex-girlfriend of mine, she loved it because she was into all the history aspects. But it just wasn't funny.
Well, you know, and because Rowan Atkinson played sort of an obsequious, you know, kind of a wormy,
sniffly little wormy, horrible little turd.
Right, and that was funny in its way. But then when you got to season 2, you got to see the real
Ben Elton coming in, to write it.
Right, a whole new.
Have you watched The Young Ones? Did you ever see that?
The Young Ones.
That's a no then.
No.
Yeah, Rick Mayall, Adrian Edmondson, Nigel Planer, this other guy who played Mike, I can't remember his name. It was written by Ben Elton. It was written roughly the same time as Blackadder 2. Very anarchic humour. You should check out, ladies and gentlemen, I am telling the Commander Culture that he's missed some very, very important culture from back in the
culture.
To be fair though, you probably weren't alive, but or if you were, you were suckling.
Yes, I was a wee tot at this time.
You're a wee Ben. You're a wee Ben. Yeah, you should check it out, sir. The Young Ones.
Was it? Because I'm sort of looking at
student
it.
comedy.
It says like anarchic offbeat. Is it similar at all to like Kids in the Hall? The Canadian show?
No idea.
No, okay.
No idea.
Because Kids in the Hall was great. That was absolute gold.
You should find The Young Ones. You'll love it, mate. They did 2 series of it. Fantastic. I was at school when it was, and I was a teenager, and it was on BBC Two over here on a Monday night.
Okay.
So it was on the other channel, and Tuesday mornings at school was, did you watch The Young Ones? It was just like, what the is this? It was just, it was like the proverbial boot up the arse of situational comedy. And I just don't think we've ever looked back since. So, yeah, you should check it out. The Young Ones.
I will.
I think there was about 6 episodes. It would look very, very dated now.
I can get past all that.
It's still funny. It's like Rick Mayall was fantastic. In fact, they all were. Rick Mayall went on to. I loved him in The New Statesman. Did you ever see The New Statesman?
No, I did not.
Oh, Commander, are you listening to Mr. Brown? You need to check out The Young Ones, and most definitely The New Statesman. The New Statesman, amazing. He played a. This was at the time of Thatcherism. So going back, he played a Conservative MP called Alan Bastard. That's all I'll say. You just find it somewhere. I don't know if it'll be on Netflix or anything like that. I don't know. I'm sure you'll be able to find it somewhere. Yeah, those you should. If they're just genuinely funny.
I'm not sure how I missed this because it was airing at the time I was there in Britain.
Yeah, I think I don't know if the Young Ones did 2 or 3 series. I don't know why I'm thinking 2. I may be wrong, but The New Statesman ran for quite a few years, maybe 3 or 4 years, and that was ITV on a Sunday night. And that was just so amazingly wacky, but it was funny. It was just very of its time. I think you'd appreciate them. I think you'd like them.
Well, I think I would too, for sure.
So that's The Young Ones, and The New Statesman.
Okay, well, since we're talking our national television treasures, I have to ask you: are you familiar with the show Northern Exposure?
I've heard of it, but I've not seen it.
Okay, that is what I would have to recommend to you because if the Piglet Files is my favorite TV show of all time, the best American television show.
That's going quite a way back, isn't it?
90s, the early 90s.
I think I know it. It may have been the type of thing that was on BBC Two.
And here's the problem with rewatching it, though, is so much of the episodes they revolve around music. So whether like the lyrics to a certain song or the beat to a certain song, with riff. But when they released it, the re-releasing company did not have the rights to all of those songs. And so they would
Oh,
put
dear.
in generic songs, and the guy would be talking about like, oh, well, Eric Clapton said this, and then they'd be playing like a generic elevator music song, and you're like, this
Supermarket music.
doesn't make any sense, right? And so there's a big market for pirated episodes of this, but the show was just, it was, and I think Doomcock would agree with this. I've heard him talk a little bit about it. I'm like waiting for his full review someday, but it was really sort of transcendental almost. It really made you think. It was comedic. It was funny also, but it had a very serious edge to it. So anyway,
Northern Exposure.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think on that note, I think we'll draw a line on this.
Sounds good.
It's amazing how we were just going to do a little 5-minute test, but 1 hour 35 minutes later, we're here still rambling on.
Mm-hmm. And luckily, we don't have to worry about boring any listeners. But
well, I could post this. It's entirely up to you. I genuinely don't think it's been too bad. If we've offended anybody, we apologise.
Well, you apologise. I probably meant it.
I'm a toxic white male, but I didn't mean it. Sorry, people. I didn't mean it. But sometimes you just need to toughen up, peeps. Some of the things I've been called, it'd make you cry. It's just,
oh no, I've
the pen is mightier than the sword, folks.
Yes, but also remember this: sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never hurt you. So
we've just got to become thick-skinned. That's what it is, Commander.
Yeah. Well, and I grew up that way. Being a bit of a nerd and an oddball, you get called.
Yeah.
They really picked the fight with the wrong people, and we're going to talk about this later. But it's like I think we should do a little. Maybe a weekly ramble. This could be quite a good, nice little show. And if you want to post this, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Okay. So you say that they've picked war with the wrong people.
They have, and I mean we're the last. We're the little kids in the corner of the school courtyard, but we're also the ones that are resilient. They attacked media, they took culture, they took government, they took the NGOs, they took the corporations, they took the schools and academia, and then they came for the nerds and the gamers. Okay, but we're people who don't give up. When we lose, when we die, we just hit the reset button and we start all over again. We are used to being bullied and picked on, so we're in our element.
I think, but I think generally people of our, I know that I'm slightly older than you. I'm the same age as Gary. Mm-hmm. Is it Generation X? When we were their age, there was none of this internet stuff. We just wanted to go out, take drugs, and party. Mm-hmm. We didn't want to destroy anything. We didn't want to tear people down. We just wanted to go out and get fucked and party. And Gary will say the same. And the baby boomers, I do apologise, ladies and gents. This is going to be me, bitter old man. The baby boomers, people who are probably late 50s, early 60s, they've got everything. Mm-hmm. They've got everything. Don't get me wrong, they worked. They had to go to work. Don't get me wrong. But they had everything, pensions, they've got the nice houses. They're the privileged ones, but they have had to work for it. Mm-hmm. And then people of my age, we've had to work, but we've not got the big pensions. We've not got the cheap houses.
Right.
People of your age, Commander, you've had to work. Anything you've got, you've had to work for it. Mm-hmm. You're probably worried about what you're going to be doing in, how you're going to manage in, when you're in your 70s and 80s, the way things are going. Mm-hmm. The people younger than you, they're working hard, and I just think they're the poor saps who are just going to be picking up the bill for everything, and I feel sorry for them. because whatever shit has gone wrong, and with the baby boomers having everything, I think the people in their late 20s, early 30s are going to be the ones who are going to be working till the fucking 80, and I feel sorry for them. But the I don't know if I'm generalizing, ladies and gentlemen. I do apologize. The people in their late teens, early 20s feel, I'm not saying it's everybody, and I'm sure that if I put this on YouTube, people go, you're a fucking wanker. It's just the way they are. You're fucking, fuck, you, whatever. You know, do they feel entitled to having everything? Probably because the parents have given them everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's their parents have been in a position to give them everything. And, you know, good for them, because they've been able to be in a position to have that done. Whereas when I was a kid, my father worked, my mother stayed at home, and we didn't get everything because there wasn't a lot of money going about in the 80s, 70s and 80s.
Well,
there's a wash.
Yeah.
There's a wash of money going around up until recently, before the banking crisis especially. And we the first world, you know, the Western world, were very, very rich, and parents had good jobs, were able to give the children good things, which that's what parents do.
Mm-hmm.
But I got stuff. I got stuff at Christmas. I got good presents, but the rest of the year didn't get a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just the way it was.
Right.
Now it's totally different, and I think that's just kind of warped these. And I don't think it's through their. I don't think it's their own fault. It's just warped. They just seem to be. They think that they're entitled to everything, and nobody's entitled to anything really.
No,
I don't know.
I'll tell you what I think, because I've had extensive contact with people of the younger generation, millennials, and you know, some of the Zoomers, they call them now. And what there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. I agree with it. I think that something to take into account, though, and if I can jump to their defense, it's and now I'll sound like a Luddite myself, but like it's technology, right? So when you and I grew up, we grew up in different eras, but we had our certain interactions with technologies. With these kids, everything is instantaneous. They're trained. They're trained by technology to have instant access.
It is the best of times, but it's the worst of times.
Right. You have the entire collective knowledge of humankind at your fingertips, yet you only read the first search term that comes up on Google. Okay, so that presents two problems. Number one, you're trained to just instantaneously arrive at the goal that you set out. Right. And the other thing is who's actually putting that number one offering in front of you. You know, that's the hardest thing that I've encountered in dealing with younger people is, you know, it's like they'll bring me something and they'll say, you know, oh, here's the answer, you know, and I'm like, okay, that's the number one search result on Google. That's not the answer. You know, I need 5 or 6 different things, and I need you to compile them and come up with something, an original analysis. You know, and they just sort of look at you like sheep, you know, on the road, and you know, like, what do you mean? You know, and it's not really their fault. They when they're trained, they end up doing very well.
They've been conditioned.
They have, and it's quite sad. You know, it's quite sad. You kind of look at, you know, you're like somebody who is visiting North Korea or something for the first time, and you're like, oh yeah, that leader's not that great.
It's probably exactly the same thing, apart from they have better food on the table.
Yeah.
God, we
Well,
really do sound like bitter old men.
well, I mean, you hit on something else here too, and this is an area of some expertise for me, and that's talking about economics.
Yeah,
I mean, they're like the flow of money is insane. I
yeah,
mean, the governments of the
yeah,
world, the British central bank, the American central bank, the Bank of Japan, and all these other
yeah,
places are printing money by the trillions, and they're showering it over
yeah.
their favored corporations. But that
Quantitative
trickles down
easing.
to the people,
Yeah, yeah,
quantitative easing to infinity.
yeah.
And that's a major problem because you end up with the money that you do have ends up buying even less than it did before, or less
Yeah.
quality, and that
It's
in
kind of
turn
it's
makes
deflation. Is it
it makes
inflation or deflation? I forget.
well, it causes both,
It's
and this is where it gets really complicated
it's
because
devaluing the currency.
exactly,
So
exactly.
effectively, the prices, what's in your. If you go, everybody, if you Google Zimbabwe,
Mm-hmm.
that's what happened over there. They just printed loads and loads of money, didn't they? And
Mm-hmm.
basically, one day a loaf of bread would cost, say, £100. The next day, it'd be 200 because they just kind of printed. It just flooded the country with printed money, and ultimately, it doesn't make the country richer. It
Right,
makes it poorer because everything costs more.
right.
It sounds weird, but it kind of reverses everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, and people
It
lose faith.
devalues the money. It devalues the money.
Mm-hmm. It devalues the money, and it devalues the faith that people have in the ability to conduct commerce.
Yeah,
Um, and that in turn leads to the collapse of society. Basically, that's another angle that I fear here in this culture war. Is if we could make people fearful of where their next meal is going to come from, or hey, you know, um, why should I save money if a gallon of milk is just going to cost twice as much next year? I might as well buy that gallon of milk now. Or if a vacation to,
yeah, yeah,
Tortuga or whatever is going to cost twice as
yeah,
much next year, I'll take it now. And so then you flush the money out from the middle class, okay, where traditionally, wealth generation has come from,
yeah.
and the stability of our culture comes from is from that middle working class. Uh, you've just denuded them of their savings. And I think that's a goal. That's something that they're working on, and I think they've been largely successful at that. Stealing value, stealth theft. There was a
Yeah.
American politician by the name of Ron Paul, who you may have heard of, and I know the listeners have heard of if they're familiar with this stuff. Is he's kind of a renegade Republican, in that he
Right.
was not the typical business Republican, and he was saying, tax is theft, but inflation is a much less visible theft. There's nobody coming up to you and saying, "Give me 10% of your money." They
Yeah.
just make the money worth 10% less than it was before. Well, you've just stolen 10% of the value. So this is something that I certainly look forward to talking about. At greater
Inflation
length.
inflation in the 1980s in the UK was off the scale. I think it was something like 50. Obviously, I was a child at the time. I was a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it was something like 15, 16% inflation.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically to the uninitiated. That's just basically if you're buying a loaf of bread a month later, it's going to be 15% dearer, but your wages haven't gone up by 15%,
Right, right.
and
Well, and
that just
yeah,
ran amok in the 80s.
that's
But
that's actually a unique economic situation called stagflation, where the wages stagnate but inflation goes up. Because in inflation, even in
oh yeah,
Zimbabwe, the
since
wages went up.
2008, yeah.
Hmm. And that's a real problem. And we had that in America in the 80s as well.
Yeah,
But my dad was a very hard worker, and he had a very good job, but his wages never kept pace with the inflation. I mean, he was making more value
Yeah.
in 1982 than he was when he retired in 2015, even though he was making, tens of thousands of dollars more on paper.
We had very, I'd probably say it was the same in the States. After the 2008 banking crisis, wages, it was stagflation over here.
Right.
I had one pay rise in literally, two pay rises in literally 10 years. Not good.
And if the government was being honest, which they're not, they would have announced the actual rate of inflation. But instead, what they did, and I think we've talked about this a little bit before, is they would substitute. I don't know, did we talk about this or was it somebody else? They'd substitute, certain goods for other goods. So, for example,
the cost of living index. Yeah, they do is take off bananas and put tablets.
Right.
We're not talking medicine either.
Right. Yeah. Or they'd replace steak with hamburger or something, and they'd say, "Well, it's both beef,"
vegan.
Or something like that. So it's and then they would take away things that are going up fastest, like medicine.
I've noticed recently, Commander, over here. I lost my job a few months ago because of what's going on. The company who I worked with used it as an opportunity to get rid of their longest serving, lowest paid staff. They saw furlough as an opportunity, which cynical.
Very.
But ultimately, they're doing me a favour in the long run because I don't have to drive 50 miles a day. Listen, folks. Don't drive 50 miles a day because you will never get the time back.
Even if you're listening to great podcasts like this one.
I'd have tailed off about an hour ago. I've lost my train of thought now. Pay rises. What was it? Pay rises, low pay rises. Yeah, they used. Yeah. I've embarrassed myself here, ladies and gentlemen, by rambling on. This is an age thing as well. I've completely forgotten what I was going to talk about. So it couldn't have been that important.
The chat, they would remind us, but we're not blessed.
We would. Commander, I think we've just stumbled into this by accident, really, haven't we? So, I think maybe we should do this. Maybe not quite as long, because we'll call this a draw at 2 hours. So we've got 8 minutes. Maybe it's just nice just to chew the fat occasionally.
And that's what it's all about, is bouncing ideas and thoughts back and forth. What they want us to be doing is to be sitting silently, consuming their sort of pablum, right? And we're not doing that. We are, as you said, chewing the fat. We're sitting around the campfire. We're sharing
the Christmas tree.
Exactly. It's right there in front of us. They tell us we can't have Christmas. We tell them to go pound sand and make our own Christmas happen.
I think it's bad what's particularly happening with what's going on. That I think over here, in the States, I don't think you've reached the stage. You in the States have kind of going back into lockdown where we were a couple of months ago or a month or so ago. There's obviously a lag. I just think when it first started, people went, okay. A little bit of pain, okay.
Right, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, this kind of thing.
7 months. So, how many? 9 months. Sorry, 9 months later. I think we're in a worse position, and we've still got 3-4 months of winter to come yet. This is the first day of winter today, everybody. Shortest day in the northern hemisphere, longest in the southern. So I don't. I know this sounds very bad. people die from crossing the road. I understand why they've done it, to protect the NHS and the NHS workers' amazing work. But has it created a rod for our own back? When's it going to finish? It's like we've got a new variant, a mutation over here, and we've effectively been locked out of Europe now. Where's it going to end? I don't know. It's just when are people going to be allowed to start living their lives again? Because people are fed up, and people have died, and
humans, as we were saying, humans are social creatures, and if we're not allowed to socialize in a relatively free environment, we will suffer. Suicide rates have gone up.
I've had some very dark times recently.
I think a lot of us have, but that's another reason that I'm here. As Commander Culture, there's a fight going on, and you're needed. Every single person listening to this is needed. Mr. Brown is needed. Commander Culture is needed. No, all the time. I mean, look,
that's just me. That's just me, Commander, playing things down. I'm the type of person who plays things down, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's a customary British trait.
It is. It's
not common in Americans.
It is.
But so but that's what I'm saying is that there's plenty to get down about, and realism is a very important part of appreciating and understanding the world around you, but at the same time,
keep it real. Yes, I've always said that. You got to keep it real.
You do. But part of that is also understanding that you yourself, in the general sense, anybody listening to this is needed. By their culture, by their countrymen, by their family, by the people around them, and people get down. If you've followed, Overlord DVD, occasionally he will talk about getting depressed, and it's not good. It's not good for the soul to always be like that. But at the same time, you don't want to say, "Oh, I'm always optimistically happy."
Maybe we should get ask Doomcock if he'll come on one of these.
I would love if he would.
Just a 2-hour ramble, just uncut, if you know what I mean. Just kind of just introduce each other and then just see where it goes. No, just we could be talking about the price of carrots, but we're talking about it for a reason. And I was actually thinking about doing a little kind of live stream at Christmas, because I know Christmas is a traumatic time for people, especially if you're alone, and especially with what's going on. And I would kind of love just to do like an open house where just come on, talk shit for 5 minutes, but at least you're talking shit,
right?
But then DC said you might get some nutters coming on. So I said, okay, maybe a stream where we can, vet. I don't know. Anyway,
it's certainly something to think about, and I would be happy to donate my 5 minutes to that.
Yeah, Commander, do that. Yeah, I've genuinely enjoyed this.
Likewise, because
as you know, this was just totally before we were talking a little bit of this, that, and the other. But this was just totally, let's just try it, see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the worst thing, folks, is that I've been in lockdown with my father for 9 months, and he's 92. There's a considerable age gap, and I don't really have anybody to speak to, and having nobody to speak to is not good.
Right.
And that's where it starts getting dark. So on a serious note, people need to speak to each other, because we are, as you've said, Commander, we are social animals,
right?
And we've had that yanked out of us this last 9 months, and it's not us, is it? And I know the only thing what's getting me through this is I know that there's people a lot worse off than me, and I feel for these people. It's just shit. It's just fucking shit. It's fucking shit. I can't ever remember anything. It's fucking shit. On the radio the other day, they were talking about this. How they were going on about World War II, kind of comparing things. But then, don't get me wrong, war is bad. But I think one of the presenter said, at least they could touch each other. At least they could hug.
Right.
It's fucked up.
Yeah.
Shall we leave it on a downer, so when we come back next time we will raise the stakes?
Yes, absolutely.
And I think I may need to look into buying a mic like yours. Since you put the mic in the box, it's been beautiful.
Excellent. That is very good to hear. I hope I won't have to leave it here, but
this 2 hours of rambling was worth it just for that alone.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree.
Right. So I'll try and sort that out, because I know that the mic on the computer is a bit boomy, so I've turned it down. But as I said, they can pick up mouse farts, so that's not good.
And squeaking chairs.
Yes, I was just about to say. So all I can say, sir, is genuinely it's been fun.
I agree. We'll definitely have to do this again.
It's been a nice little. Obviously, this was a trial for Commander Culture's channel, because he's going to be looking into doing stuff in the new year. So, to remind us, Commander, what is your channel going to be? If everybody has stayed until the end, I applaud you, because I was flagging an hour ago, but I applaud you. But what's your
this
channel?
This kind of thing energizes me, so I can go like the Energizer rabbit. But no, so the channel basically looks at all elements of culture. I am an unapologetic Western chauvinist. I want to celebrate the beautiful, the good, and the true with all of the people who stand against cultural destruction and vandalization. Just be nice sometimes, though. Yes. It's nice to be nice. I know it's a cliche. Everything just sounds cliches. Just sound like cliches, don't they? But a lot of the time, they are true. They are. There's a deeper meaning behind it. There's a reason it's a cliche. So, young people, if an old fucker like me starts saying cliches, just try and think past the cliche. Yeah. So. Anyway, sir, shall we call it a draw? Sure. Let's do it. It's been wonderful. Have a great Christmas. You too. You too. Listen, everybody, have a great Christmas. Yeah. And I'm sure me and the Commander will pop up talking crap again. Good crap, hopefully. Yeah. Before long. That's just me being British again, isn't it? Sorry. Thank you, sir. Okay. Have a great rest of your day. Cheers, everybody. If you've stuck to the end, I salute you. Thank you very much. This was my first ever YouTube ramble podcast. Call it what you will. Thank you, sir. Cheers. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.